My dear students, from last couple of sessions we have been revising the lessons. In today's class, let us revise one of the poems, that is in Unit 3, first poem, John Donne's Death Be Not Proud. John Donne was a 17th century who lived at the end of 16th and beginning of 17th century. He was 17th century poet, we can say. He is also a founder of a metaphysical school of poetry, and that school or group of poets, they experimented in the form and style of writing poems. They broke away from Elizabethan style of poetry, and they had their own ideas to present in their own way. The characteristics of that school of poetry is that they used far-fetched imagery, in the sense unfamiliar imagery, similes, conceits and metaphors, and they tried to compare two dissimilar things, and they made shocking beginnings in their poems. So this is how they are considered to be a group of poets who are called metaphysical poets. And these poets include John Donne, George Herbert, Richard Crashaw, Henry Vaughan and Andrew Marvell. Also Thomas Traherne. John Donne wrote satires, elegies, love poems and poems in metaphysical strain. Look at his works, songs and sonnets, which are actually love poems, and holy sonnets and other religious lyrics. Death Be Not Proud, this poem sonnet is taken from holy sonnets. And another collection of poetry, anniversaries. So these are the themes that he deals with in his poems: divine love, belief in God, death, life, religion, and even love. He was also a love poet. Besides metaphysical poet, he was a love poet as well. So this sonnet, as you know, sonnet is a 14-line poem, and there are two styles of this sonnet: Petrarchan, 8 plus 6 lines, or Shakespearean, 4 into 3, 12, and then last 2 lines. This sonnet by John Donne has both the characteristics. So this is the rhyme scheme of the sonnet. Okay, here is the poem. Let's have a reading of it first. Yes, death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom you think thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet can you kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure, then from thee much more must flow. And soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. You are slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and does with poison, war, and sickness dwell. And poppy or charms can make us sleep as well, and better than your stroke. Why swell you then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, you shall die. Fine. Here is the gist of the poem. The sonnet is actually the poet's spiritual journey to find out the truth about life and death. And in this journey, he challenges death and he dares death, saying that death is not at all fearsome, death is not at all awful and powerful. So, though many people fear it, call it very powerful, John Donne argues that death is not at all powerful and awful, rather, it is a slave. Better than that, uh, even poppy can charm work. It is just a short sleep, and after that, we wake up eternally, which means life is eternal. Now, he expresses this idea of life is eternal, and he makes irony of death, saying that finally it is death which will or who will die. Let's consider discussing and understanding the sonnet line by line. First two lines. In first two lines, he addresses death directly. Says, "Death, be not proud." ಓ ಸಾವೇ, ನಿನ್ನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೀನು ಹೆಮ್ಮೆ ಪಡಬೇಡ, ನಾನು ಪವರ್ಫುಲ್, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹೆದರಿಕೆ ಭರಿಸುವಂತೆ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಪವರ್ಫುಲ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ನಾನು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನೀನು ಹೆಮ್ಮೆ ಪಡಬೇಡ. ತುಂಬ ಜನ ನಿನ್ನನ್ನು ಮೈಟಿ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಡ್ರೆಡ್ಫುಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಯು ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಸೊ. So, in the first two lines he makes his argument, that is, death, you should not feel proud, even though people call you mighty and dreadful, you are not powerful and awful. And he continues in lines number 3 and 4, for those whom you think you does overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet can you kill me. Now the speaker, he humbles the death by saying that you are powerless. If you think you kill the powerless, it is just an illusion. ನೀನು ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನೂ ಕೊಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ನೀನೇನಾದರೂ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರೆ, ಎಲ್ಲರ ಜೀವನೂ ತೆಗೆದುಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ನಾನು ಅಂತ ನೀನೇನಾದರೂ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಬರೀ ಭ್ರಮೆ ಮಾತ್ರ, illusion. Because you don't have such power at all. He pities the death by saying, oh, poor death, you are in illusion. He makes fun of death. And nor, he says, neither you can die nor you can kill me. So this expresses the belief in Christianity that says eternal life is important, death is temporary. Further, he tries to support his argument. His argument is death is not at all powerful and awful. So in rest of the lines, he tries to support his argument. Previously he says you are in illusion. Now, if you think you kill others, no, it is not true. And now he talks about the pictures of death. The pictures of death, images of death are nothing but a resting person or sleeping person. Then, rest or sleep rather rejuvenates life. Now, in that sense, those pictures make us feel happy, pleasurable. Then, if that is the case, there is nothing to fear you. Donne addresses the death saying, ಈ ಥರ ಇರುವಾಗ ಸಾವಿನ ಒಂದು ಚಿತ್ರ ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರುವಂಥ ಮಲಗಿರುವಂಥ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಅಂತ ಆದರೆ ಅದು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಖುಷಿ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ ಹೊರತಾಗಿ ಹೆದರಿಕೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅದರಿಂದ. Further, here in these two lines also he supports his argument, saying, and soonest our best men with you do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. ಕೆಲವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮೆನ್ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯವರೇ ಬೇಗ ಹೊರಟೋಗೋದು ಈ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಿಂದ ಅಂತ. ಓ ಸಾವೇ, ನೀನೇನಾದರೂ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರೆ ಏನಂತ, ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ನ ನಾನು ಬೇಗ ಸಾವನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಏನಾದರೂ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರೆ ಯು ಆರ್ ಇನ್ ಇಲ್ಯೂಷನ್. Best people die because they need rest. Their body is put to rest, peaceful rest, and their soul is freed from their body. That is called salvation. That body gets freedom from, the soul gets freedom from the body. Therefore, you don't feel proud saying that you kill the best people first. That's another point. Here are two more points to defend his argument or support his argument. He further says, he calls death a slave which has no separate identity to work or act upon its own. How? That is, death is actually guided by fate, chance, kings, and desperate men who commit suicide. Now, where does death live? Death is the slave of fate. Death is actually slave of fate, slave of chance, slave of kings, because kings die in battlefield, and that's where this death works as slave. And by chance people die. Yes, again it's a slave there. It's not that death kills them, no, rather by chance people die and there appears death. Even kings, and even with desperate people and fate, it is true. And that's how death is not a powerful and a separate entity, rather it is a slave to fate. So wherever fate works its way, there is the death. And even with chance and the kings and desperate people who commit suicide. And look at the place where death lives, again to prove it is not independent and powerful. Death is like a parasite who lives in poison. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಸಪ್ರೇಟ್ ಲಿವಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್, ಪವರ್ಫುಲ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಯಾವುದೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಪವರು ಇಲ್ಲ, ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಕೂಡ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಅವಲಂಬಿತ ಆಗಿರೋದು ಇದು ಡೆತ್, ಗುಲಾಮ. ಲೈಕ್ ಎ ಪ್ಯಾರಸೈಟ್, ಡೆತ್ ಲಿವ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಪಾಯ್ಸನ್. ಆ ವಿಷದಲ್ಲಿರುತ್ತೆ ಇದು ಡೆತ್, ಅಥವಾ ವಾರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸಿಕ್ನೆಸ್. Right? It's very true. With this, Donne continues to argue that death is not mighty and powerful. So this experience of death, which is nothing but sleep. Death ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಲೀಪ್, ಅದು ಒಂಥರ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಸ್ಲೀಪ್ ಆರ್ ಇಟರ್ನಲ್ ಸ್ಲೀಪ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಕೊನೆ ಇಲ್ಲದ ನಿದ್ರೆ, ಅದು ಪರ್ಮನೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಲೀಪ್. ಸೊ ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ನ ಡೆತ್, ಸಾವು ಬಂದೇ ನಾವು ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಜಾನ್ ಡನ್, ಹಿ ಸೇಸ್, ನಿನ್ನ ಈ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ನ ನಾವು ಇನ್ನೂ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಯಾವುದರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ಬೋದು? ಪಾಪಿ, ಎ ಡ್ರಗ್, ಆರ್ ಚಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್, ಮ್ಯಾಜಿಕ್ ಸ್ಪೆಲ್ಸ್, ಇದರಿಂದನೂ ನಾವು ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ ವೆನ್ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಕೇಸ್, ವೈ ಡು ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಯು? ನೀನೇ ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಕು ನಮಗೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಲೀಪ್ನ ಅನುಭವಕ್ಕೆ, ನಿದ್ರೆ ಅನುಭವಕ್ಕೆ. ನ್ಯಾಚುರಲ್ ಆಗಿಯೂ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಅಥವಾ ಇನ್ನೂ ನಿನಗಿಂತನೂ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಡ್ರಗ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಮ್ಯಾಜಿಕ್ ಸ್ಪೆಲ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ವಿತ್ ದಿಸ್, Donne says that death is not independent entity and all powerful. If that is the case, he asks death, why do you boast of yourself? ಹೀಗಿರುವಾಗ ಯಾಕೆ ನೀನು ಜಂಬದಿಂದ ನಾನೇ ಪವರ್ಫುಲ್ ಆಫುಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀಯ. ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಡೆತ್ನ. ಇನ್ ಫೈನಲ್ 2 lines he further attacks death and dares it. One short sleep past, we wake up eternally. So death, what are you? You are just a temporary thing. ಸಾವು ನೀನು ಒಂದು ಸರಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಬರ್ಬೋದು ನಮಗೆ, ಒಂದು ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಲೀಪ್ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ವಿ ವೇಕ್ ಅಪ್ ಇಟರ್ನಲಿ. ಹಿಯರ್ there is an echo of the rebirth. Birth is again permanent, and Christian belief of eternal life is echoed here. And once you come and go, we wake up eternally, and death shall be no more. Once I become free from, once I become free from this body, the soul is relieved from the body, that soul is eternally free. Therefore, who will die? Ironically, he says, death, you will die. Therefore, he augments his argument that death is not powerful and awful, so don't feel proud. Now, with these points, that death is a slave, having no independent identity, no power, no place of living, and calling it its action is, or belief is, an illusion, he proves that death is not powerful and awful. Well, yes, with this you go through the points here in recap. That's it from this session. Thank you.